Hi, it's great to be here. David was making me a little older than I am. It was my parents who fled Nazi Germany. I was born here, but so why don't I'll start with my witness testimony and go on into the theology which kind of flows from it, which is the relationship between Judaism and the Catholic Church. So let me kind of start at the beginning. As David mentioned, my parents are German Jewish Holocaust refugees. They were both born and raised in Germany. My father escaped right after Hitler came to power. There was a short period. I'm sorry to do this, but is it possible to have some background lights in the room, or is, anyway, I'd like to look at you, but anyway. There was a short period when Jews were allowed to leave as long as they didn't take anything with them. My mother was less fortunate, and she was caught up under the Nazis, and they fled to France, but then France got under Nazi occupation, and my mother was actually put on a train en route to a concentration camp, but escaped. They met in the United States and married, and I was born in a suburb of New York City. Very Jewish environment. Everyone I knew was Jewish. My entire life revolved around being Jewish. I had a fairly devout nature, and my relationship to God I certainly saw entirely in the context of the Jewish religion and the Jewish relationship to God. And I followed Jewish religious education all the way through from the beginning of school until I left for college. And in fact, the summer between high school and college, I became a disciple of a Hasidic Jewish rabbi. The Hasids are the ultra-Orthodox Jews with the ear curls and the long black frock coats. And I lived with him and traveled with him in Israel, and even toyed with the idea of not going back to the United States and beginning college in the fall, but entering Jewish religious life in a yeshiva in Israel. But I didn't. I went back to the United States. I started M.I.T., and when I was at M.I.T. is really when I lost my faith. Now, there were two aspects to that. I'd like to say I lost my faith in the presence of this pseudoscientific worldview, we know better than to believe in God, right? We've come to tell you that God doesn't exist. That could really have characterized the MIT education in those days to some extent. But that's only part of the story. I think the heart of the story is probably I lost my faith because I fell into sin. And I think very often, if not usually, when people lose their faith, they may have all kinds of intellectual rationalizations, but at the heart of it, they've fallen out of a state of grace, and faith is a gift, and it's very related to being in a state of grace. I called it a pseudoscientific worldview at MIT. This is a little bit of a digression, but let me make it. Pseudoscientific because the essence of science is to look at the evidence and to draw conclusions on the basis of the evidence, right? G.K. Chesterton has a quote, which is, rightly or wrongly, those who believe in miracles believe in them on the basis of the evidence. And rightly or wrongly, those who disbelieve in miracles refuse to believe in them on the basis of faith, right? Faith has all the miracles. Faith has all the evidence. Faith has all of the scientific support behind it. I mean, you look at the medical miracles at Lourdes. You look at the miracle at Fatima where 80,000, 100,000 people saw the miracle of the sun. You look at all of the miracles that take place at Medjugorje, you could probably, in this room, find 50 miraculous conversions or reversions that took place at Medjugorje. If this was a truly scientific attitude, it would confirm the Catholic faith. It wouldn't deny it, because it would look at the evidence and draw the conclusion that the evidence leads to, not say, oh, no, we're not going to believe that. We're going to say those 80,000 people were all simultaneously hallucinating, because we refuse to believe in the alternative, which is the Catholic faith. But anyway, digression number one. If someone wants to keep count, there may be a few more. But anyway, so I fell away from my faith at MIT. I went on to Harvard Business School. I did pretty well there, well enough to be invited back to join the faculty. And so I found myself at the ripe old age of 29, a newly minted professor of marketing at Harvard Business School. And that's really where my conversion story begins, because what had been happening was all my life up to this point, I had known in my heart there has to be a true meaning in life. And at some point when I'm older, I will find the true meaning in life. I'll come into life's true meaning. As a small child, I assumed that meaning in life would be found in my relationship to God. And I always thought growing up that at the day of my bar mitzvah, the bar mitzvah is the Jewish coming of age of a young man into religious adulthood. It takes place at the age of 13. It's roughly analogous to the Catholic confirmation. I always assumed that at my bar mitzvah, the veil would drop and I would come to know God personally. And when that didn't happen, it was actually one of the saddest days of my childhood. And then pretty soon I decided the real meaning of life would come when I got a driver's license, or when I got a girlfriend, or when I left home, or if I got into a good college, or if I got into Harvard Business School, or when I started my career, and so forth. But here I was at the age of 29, having achieved all of those external objective goals that I thought would bring real meaning to life. And in fact, there was no point to anything still, and nothing mattered, and nothing meant anything. We just are this random chemical soup that lives for 80 or 90 years and die, and, there's no meaning or purpose to anything. And there was nothing more to look forward to in my life that might bring me into real meaning. So I fell into, in fact, the deepest despair of my life up to that point. And it was in that mood, I was walking alone in the pine woods behind a beach on Cape Cod early one morning. That was where I found my greatest solace, was walking alone in nature. And I received the single most spectacular grace of my life. From one moment to the next, I found myself in the presence of God, seeing my life as though I were looking back over my life in the presence of God after death. And I saw in an instant everything that I would be happy about and everything that I would wish I had done differently. I saw that my two greatest regrets when I died would be all of the time and energy I wasted worrying about not being loved, when every moment of my existence I was held in an ocean of love greater than I imagined could exist, coming from an all-knowing, all-loving God. And the other great regret would be every hour that I had wasted not doing anything of value in the eyes of heaven. Here I had been so worried about life having no meaning, and I saw that every minute of our lives holds the potential for an infinite depth of meaning, greater than I had ever hoped for, right? Every moment of our lives, we have the opportunity to make a moral choice for good or for ill. We have the opportunity to pray. We have the opportunity to do something for which we will be grateful for all eternity. Or we can let that opportunity slip and in some sense be kicking ourselves for all eternity for that wasted opportunity. Now, I was 100% selfish at this time, and I saw everything still selfishly despite the nature of this experience. So I apologize for the way I interpreted it. But the way I looked at things during this experience was, here, all my life, I had been selfish, and the problem was I had been stupidly selfish, right? If I had been intelligently selfish, I would have spent my life trying to be as great a saint as possible, because that's the only thing that makes sense, even from a selfish point of view, in the light of the truth. I saw that if I wanted to be intelligent and selfish, instead of trying to be a Harvard Business School professor, I tried to be as much like Mother Teresa as possible. And I saw that every hour of our lives has the possibility, the potential to essentially, I apologize if it sounds corny, but add a pearl to our crown for all eternity. I mean, to do something that we will, in some sense, be benefiting from for all eternity. I saw that the meaning and purpose of my life was to worship and serve this Lord and God and Master who was revealing himself to me. I saw another thing that I had kicked myself for in this experience was the state of anxiety in which I had lived all my life. Because all my life I had kind of thought, oh, if only this hadn't happened, then I would be happy. Or if only that disaster hadn't befallen me, then I would be happy. When in fact I saw that everything that had ever happened to me, everything that ever happens to any of us, is the most perfect thing that can be arranged coming from the hands of an all-knowing, all-loving God. I saw that every moment of my existence, he had been aware of me, he had known me by name, he had been watching me, had been caring about me, he had known what I was feeling, known what my reactions were to every situation, known what my pains and sufferings were, known what my joys were. And the fact that he knew me by name and was holding me in this love all of my life was actually by far the single biggest aspect of this experience. At the time I thought, and again this sounds a little corny, but it's the way I was thinking, that if I was at home watching the state of the